Welcome back, Idiot Squared viewers. This week, we are going to be discussing the much anticipated, highly revered topic of what is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of one's life? What is this all about? Some different people's views on it. We're going to be discussing Isaac Asimov and a great clip that he has online. We're also going to be discussing some science fiction writers as well as Asimov. But Frank Herbert, the famous for writing the Dune series, and a bunch more. It's going to be fun, exciting, interesting, probably mind-melting. But we're going to jump straight in. Oscar, how are you today?
Good, guy. I'm good, bro. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much for asking.
Nice.
You excited about this topic?
Yeah, but I don't know who Isaac Asimov is. But I am, yeah. Sorry. I'm mad pumped for this topic. I love talking about the meaning of life. Yeah, it's a great topic, bro. Especially...
So...
Yeah.
You go.
No, when it's the end of the night and you're with all the boys and you just had a big night. I'm not going to get into any specifics of what might have been partaken during that night, but it's been a big night and you're all together, and it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. And you just start shooting the shit about the meaning of life, dude. Those are some of my favorite moments in life, dude. When you're with the boys, shoot the shit about what the meaning of life is and what the fuck's going on. So I think everyone could kind of relate to that in some way.
I would hope so. Yeah. I think it's a meaningful thing to think about at various times throughout your life. But you mentioned just quickly, you didn't know who Isaac Asimov is.
No.
So Isaac Asimov is a pretty famous science fiction writer. But he was also a biochemist, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he was a professor of biochemistry at Boston University. So he's got like a big science background, but then he also really lent into science fiction. And so he's written some amazing works that, like, in some ways have, been quite predictive of the future, so to speak. He's inspired, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, maybe even billions of people that have read his works to think and explore different thought space and possibility spaces, which is fascinating. Have you heard of Frank Herbert as well or not?
No, I've not heard of Frank Herbert either. Who's that?
Okay. So Frank Herbert is the writer of the very famous Dune series. So I don't know. You've seen the recent Dune movie that came out?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
So he's the guy responsible for writing the books that inspired that movie, or that movie is based on. Fascinating. There's so many levels to the meaning in his stories. It's just mind-boggling. But an interesting thing, like growing up, I wasn't a big science fiction consumer. I was more nonfiction, right? So like factual stuff. And I was always not necessarily against science fiction, like it appealed to me a little bit, but I was more interested in this nonfiction. But since getting older and expanding my horizons and learning more, I've found myself getting more and more into nonfiction. And I just quickly want to hit on why that is it's unconstrained in a sense. Science fiction is all about what could be possible. Whereas nonfiction is all about like what we currently know, which is very limited in the scope of things. And so it's interesting when you see these people who are from technical backgrounds or from scientific backgrounds going into nonfiction. Going out of nonfiction into fiction, right? Where they're actually freer to explore possibility space. They're not constrained by what's currently thought to only be possible. They can explore this much greater space. And it's just fascinating and amazing. But I think it's valuable. I found this clip of Asimov just the other day, and it struck me. I was like, this is really quite brilliant, but it's also a very succinct way to convey a huge amount of meaning. And I think it's an interesting framing. So yeah, we'll let the clip do the talking, and then we can sort of break down bits of it.
It seems to me that when it's time to die, and that will come to all of us, there'll be a certain pleasure in thinking that you had utilized your life well, that you had learned as much as you could, gathered in as much as possible of the universe, and enjoyed it. I mean, there's only this one universe and only this one lifetime to try to grasp it. And while it is inconceivable that anyone can grasp more than a tiny portion of it, at least do that much. I mean, what a tragedy just to pass through and get nothing out of it.
Beautiful, right?
It is fucking beautiful. It's beautiful, and also, I don't know. There is that beautiful side, but it also leaves me kind of like, oh damn, like I better make sure I make the best of it. You know what I mean? Like I better make sure that I live life to the fullest and really try and get something out of it. And I feel like there's two assumptions of what he's saying. One assumption is that you can die happy if you are convinced that you've lived life to the fullest. And if you don't, the other assumption is if you don't, well, you're probably not going to die happy. You probably won't have that peace and serenity in your final moments. So that part's kind of eerie at the same time. And I can't help to think about all the people out there that aren't living life to the fullest, how that is going to affect them, you know, in their last moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing about life is that's their path, that's their journey, and again, like we talk, you know, like that good or bad, right or wrong, like it's not a very subjective thing. Some things just are, and by having this sort of perspective, by taking some time to think about life and what does it mean to live a meaningful life or live life well, or what does it mean to live life to the fullest. And your definition of that, that can help to sort of increase the possibility of you achieving those things, or minimize the possibility of getting to the end of your life and having regrets or wishing that you'd done more or other things. Like you said, it's like it lights a spark underneath you. It can sort of give you that nudge you need to really get out and start to pursue the things that you would like to pursue, and to try and take in as much of this life, this universe, as you possibly can, even in the face of knowing that you can't take it all in. You can only ever sample, you can only ever experience such a small subset of this potentially infinite thing that is life and the universe. It's just so beautiful, right? Like, you know, knowing that you could never do it all, trying your best to try and get as much as you can out of it. Welcome to Good Meals. I'm Reuben. I'm the founder and developer of Good Meals, and I'm here to introduce you to a smarter way to approach your diet. Forget the one-size-fits-all meal plans. Good Meals is about precision, personalization, and simplicity. Not just a meal planner, it's a tool that adapts to you. Start by telling us about yourself. Your goals are unique, so should be your meal plan. Good Meals utilizes advanced AI to tailor every meal to your specific nutritional needs. Here's where it gets interesting. Our extensive database isn't just a collection of recipes, it's a culinary exploration. Whether you have specific dietary preferences or just what's available in your fridge, Good Meals finds the perfect recipe for you. And it's not just about variety. We focus on the nutritional value, ensuring that every bite takes you closer to your health goals. Join Good Meals today at goodmeals.health. It's not just about eating better, it's about revolutionizing the way you think about food. Because at Good Meals, every meal is a step towards a healthier, happier you.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like in this podcast, in this episode, I'm gonna be trying to sort of discuss things from a very personal and biased perspective of what the meaning of life is, and I'm gonna try and attempt to not be that way, so we can sort of explore that, because for me, I know what I want to get out of life, right? And I know what it is to live life to the fullest to me. But like you said, that's an individual thing that could be different for everybody. So one person who's living their life to the fullest, for me, might be like, yo, you're wasting your life, bro. Right?
Legitimately, yeah.
So it's all very individual. So maybe that's where I should try and focus instead of just thinking about like what it is to me. Maybe just try and realize that any person can feel fulfilled with what they're currently doing, and there's so many levels to fulfillment, and there's so many variations in what is going to get that person to feel fulfilled. So instead of saying, oh, you need to live life to the fullest, when I say that, I can't be saying it, from my perspective. It needs to be, what do you think
More general.
what do you think living life to the fullest is, and achieve that, right?
Yeah.
But also don't lower the bar for yourself, and so it's like an easy bar to cross or to achieve or to get to, right? That would be like my advice, because I think it could be comfortable thinking, oh, like for me, living life to the fullest is just doing this much, something very easy and simple. Well, maybe just move the bar a little bit higher. Maybe I think that'd be my advice, or maybe I'm wrong. See, I'm already going.
You hit on an interesting thing just there, which is don't set the bar too low, right? But at the same time, like if it is low, try and set it up a little bit. I can't remember the specifics. It's blanking in my mind at the moment, but it made me think of something I read a while ago, and I'm going to butcher it, but I'll give it my best shot. It's essentially like lots of sort of suffering and not necessarily anxiety, but lots of suffering or, just lack of enjoyment or something is when people feel stuck, right? They feel like they're not making progress. They feel like they're just doing the same thing for the same results over and over, like Groundhog Day kind of vibe. And then there's another view of that, which is, and I think we touched on this like a couple of pods back, which is like depression. If you think of depression as in a literal sense of like you have a surface, okay, and in that surface there is a depression, right? So you have surface and then there's a depression. If you're stuck in that depression, you feel like you're going nowhere, right? And that can be the source of a lot of suffering or even pain in some circumstances, right? And so part of what Asimov's saying in life is to continuously build and move forward and progress, and know that there will be times where, you have to go back a little bit in order to go forward further. But he doesn't say live life to the fullest. He says live life well, which is probably a more general way of saying what you're saying. But I think that it kind of makes it work really well when he uses the word well. So live life well. And so part of that is you want to be able to explore ideally, all of it, right? But we can't explore all of it because we're finite. And so we can only ever sample a subset, like a small amount of what's possible. And so you're sort of, if you don't feel like you're capable or able to explore as much as you could, that can lead to feeling like you're in those depressions or you're down or suffering or all that sort of stuff. And so part of the trick to life is learning how to do hard things, learning to weave and stitch knowledge together so that you can build up this sort of structure that supports you and allows you to navigate this space more effectively. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh man, I suddenly felt a little bit of guilt about something. I don't even know how to explain this, dude. And I felt this before in the midst of these types of conversations, because these types of conversations are almost exclusive to man, how do I say this without sounding like an asshole? Okay, I'll give you an example. I saw this video once, and I'm getting kind of nervous. I saw this video once, and there was this kid, and he was being interviewed, and he lived in a very poor country, and he was working as a child, right, to try and make something for his family. And he was in a situation where he's making, like $1 a day, something absurd, because he was living in a very poor country, and he was being interviewed. And the lady asks him, what else do you eat anything other than bread? Because she wanted to get to because she knew that the kid was only eating bread every day. Like that was the only thing part of his diet. So she wanted to get the audience to understand that. So to do that, she asked the kid, do you eat anything other than bread? And the kid looks at her and says, there's other things to eat? And that fucked me up. I was like, holy shit. The kid doesn't even know that there's other food available. So he's in a situation where he can't even begin to dream about like his, another life, because he doesn't understand what that could be, or have discussions like this about what is the meaning of life, when all he knows is slave type of work and eating bread and suffering, right? I'm sure he has moments of happiness, because we're very adaptable. And I think that in any situation, you could find moments of happiness for sure. But it makes you feel a little bit guilty, because we're able to have these levels of conversations about what the meaning of life is. And this poor child didn't even know that there was other food available other than bread. And that's like, I don't know, that for some, that thought just kind of entered my mind. So how lucky we are to be able to even partake in these types of conversations.
Absolutely. 100. You're exactly right, which is why it's like there's a decent responsibility with that. That's why you actually need to have these and try and put them out there, right? Trying to put them into the meme verse and get them colliding with other things, so that there's the chance that other people can interact with these kinds of ideas and see that there are these possibilities to expand their world model and their conceptions of the world and the universe. All right, like, so you just mentioned he didn't even know that there was other food than bread. Like, his world model is really quite small. And like, we look at that and think, oh, wow, like, that must be so horrible. But don't forget, there's also this very famous saying, which is ignorance is bliss. And so there is some sense of that to a degree as well, right? But I think there's one way we can interpret what Asimov said in that video, which is like, you're wanting to live life well, try and sample as much of this world, this universe, this life as you possibly can, even though you can never sample all of it. And so for that kid, he's sampling a certain subset of what's possible of life. And if he can over time start to grow that world model, that's a life well lived, right? Like, that's a beautiful thing. If he can start to sample a little bit more of life and what's possible, that can be a life well lived. It might look, you said you feel sorry for him, you feel bad. Like, yes, absolutely, that's one way to think about it. But at the same time, it's also just another unique experience. And you feel that wouldn't be good, but only because of where you're coming from, where you're looking at it from, because you are cognizant of all of these other possibilities. And you might know, like, yeah, bread's pretty good, but bread with peanut butter and jam is way better off, and because you've had that then seems so bad to you. But for him, that bread, if he gets a little bit of butter on that bread, like, man, like that would be like, 10 Christmases all wrapped in one. So it's relative to a degree as well. I agree with you. I do think that it is sad. And one of the things you can do, also one of the only things we really can do, is try to put more of these ideas, more of these concepts, more of this sort of information or memes out, like I said, into that meme verse, so that hopefully more people can collide with them, increase the possibility of colliding with things that can help to expand that world model. And increase your ability to sample. I don't know if that made a huge amount of sense. It did to me.
No, it did.
Okay.
It did. And it's funny because I earlier said that I'm going to try and sort of separate myself from my biases to try and have this conversation. And then I immediately went to my biases, and you brought up a good point. Well, remember that for him, it's his world model is completely different. So his moments of happiness are going to be, gain from circumstances that wouldn't make you happy, for example, right? So yeah, it's true, man.
Potentially.
It is that way, yeah.
And another beautiful thing about life is that perspective shift. You just mentioned about your biases, and that's what it means to be an observer. To be a person is to have biases. You can't be completely free of biases because you can't form anything about anything. It's not inherently a bad thing. It's just when you're not aware that's the only reason you see it that way is because of those. So feel free to include your biases. Like it really doesn't matter as long as we can remember that is inherently where that view is coming from, if that kind of makes sense. But one interesting thing is if you are someone who's, suffering a bit or feeling down or feeling sad, there is a really cool trick you can use, which is like a perspective shift. And so like,
A what?
A perspective shift. So change your perspective. So for example, like say your boss has sent you this, email and it's made you get really insecure about your job and whatever. It's affected your self-confidence,
Fucking quit.
Think of that. That's one option. But the other thing you can do is just like literally think of that boy who is working for $1 a day, doing slave labor, who doesn't know that there are other foods other than bread. And that's all he's ever eaten. And that's all he ever knows. And think to yourself like, oh, wow, this is nothing in comparison to that in a sense. And so by having that little perspective shift, it can help you to be incredibly grateful for things that otherwise might not be grateful, like that you might otherwise not be grateful for, because you get too lost in that thing and forgetting that there's all these other things everywhere else.
Have you ever thought about how you would like to die? Like what would be the dopest way you could go, you think?
I tell you what, I have not actually thought of that. I've definitely thought about how I wouldn't want to go.
Yeah.
But no, I'd never really thought, like I've thought about that whole the process coming to an end. I think I've mentioned this before, but when I was quite a number of years ago, probably 15, maybe 20 years ago, I read this book called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, or The Tibetan Art of Living and Dying, Life and Death, one or the other. And because they have a completely different conception of death, right? Like they face the reality of death essentially like from when they can. And it plays a part in their entire life, as opposed to like Western culture where we typically don't talk about it, don't think about it, try and like pretend like it's never going to happen. But then end up having to deal with all this stuff at the end of it. But no, so for me, to answer your question, I haven't really, but I've always thought that like for sure doing something that you love would be a good way, or to just peacefully go in your sleep. I think that might also be another nice way to do it. But I think I'll ask you the question back and then we can go on a little pivot from here, because I think that's a really good point about thinking about that. And we can talk about like heaven and hell. I think we've touched on this before, but it could be a good little tangent. So yeah, have you ever thought about that?
Fuck, guy. I have a boring answer. My mom used to always say to me the same thing. She says, if I'm going to die, I hope I die in my sleep. So I always remember her saying that. And then I was thinking, yeah, that would be, probably the easiest way to go out. Definitely don't want to go out in pain, like mad pain. And then I've had like those childhood dreams, where I'm a hero and I'm saving someone and I die doing so. But
okay.
I wouldn't want to do that too early in my life, right? There was a point in my life, dude. Yeah, so I don't really have a good answer for that. In my sleep as well, I would say. But there was a point in my life, dude, where I was like, if I die at the age of 60, that's good enough. I don't give a fuck. And I was sort of living my life in a way where, yeah, if I continue down this path, I probably will die at 60. If I continue, doing some of the things, some of the lifestyle choices that I was making. And then now, I definitely don't want to die at 60. I want to live forever, maybe. I want to live to 100 and possibly even live forever, but I want to make sure that I can get as many years out of this life as possible. And if that means uploading my consciousness onto a computer, I'll fucking do it now, man. I would love to do that now. But back in the day, I'm like, no, fuck that noise, dude. I'm gonna die at 60. Definitely would never upload my consciousness to a computer. That sounds, stupid. But that's totally changed now, man. And I would love to. Oh, this is why though. If I drew a graph of my curiosity, it was really high when I was younger. And then I would say maybe in my mid-20s, it took a mad dip, dude, like a mad dip. And now from maybe 32 to now, so I'm 30, 36 or 37, 30, 36. Yeah, I'm turning 37.
This is a good sign. This is a good sign that you don't remember.
So
it is.
Yeah?
Yeah, 100%. Like if you're tracking if you're not even paying attention to how old you are, like it's wicked because a lot of people predefine how they should feel and how they should be because of their age. They're like, oh, I'm this old now. I need to do this. And it's like, bro, what?
I stopped thinking about it like a few years ago.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
So yeah, 36. So between 32 and 36, my curiosity has spiked up again. That of what it was when I was a child. And part of that is making me, if I die at 60, I won't be able to do as many things and learn as many things and experience as many things. Because for me, I want experiences, dude. I love experiences and just fucked up experience too. Like any type of experiences is cool. I like putting myself in situations that other people would think that you shouldn't do that because I believe that there might be an experience there.
That's right. You like to get a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, challenge yourself, which is an incredibly useful and valuable thing. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's it.
So I like that. That's really good. So an interesting thing to think about, we'll do the death thing in a second, but an interesting thing to think about what you were just saying is you had this, drop in your curiosity or a bit of a depression even. And that changed your worldview. And then since your curiosity has started to increase over time again, it's changed your worldview. It's changed your world model as well. It's changed what's possible. And I think a big part of aging and even dying to a degree is like, if you're not excited about getting up the next day, if you're not excited about exploring life, the world, the universe, what real point is there in living, right? Like, so I think that curiosity is tied to youth in a sense. And if you can maintain a curiosity, mentioned like there's so much you want to explore and learn. If you can maintain that for as long as possible, I think you maintain your youth for as long as possible. And I think that can increase longevity, right? Like purpose and meaning is incredibly important, but also that curiosity as well. Like actually wanting to get up, actually wanting to go and do things, getting excited about stuff, understanding that not everything's easy, things will be hard, but like loving the fact that it's hard because it's a unique experience. It allows you to sample something that not everyone else has sampled, purely because of the difficulty. That's a beautiful thing. But I think that really plays a role in aging, is maintaining that curiosity. Like you see a lot of, these things with cognitive decline and physical decline. And it's because people tell themselves they shouldn't have to do things, as well as they stop exploring. They stop trying to learn and challenge themselves. They in a sense, people, certain percentages of people tell themselves that they know it all already. And I think for me, that's probably the only time I would want to die, maybe, is like, I think I figured it all out, And the coolest thing about with the universe and us existing, as the universe experiencing itself, is we can't ever fully experience everything. So essentially it could be open-ended, right? Like it could go on forever and ever and ever. And you touched on wanting to possibly live forever. And I think whilst there are still things to be interested in, that works really well. But like, imagine, you live for 100,000 years and you've been and done it all, seen it all or whatever. Then I think you would just want to turn yourself off, like once you've done it all, kind of vibe. So I don't even know if forever is a feasible thing, unless we truly do live in an infinite, open-ended sort of universe of exploration. That it could just be a beautiful thing like that. But unless you have anything to hit on there, I would also like to touch on the deathbed stuff.
Yeah. Vajra guy.
So I think I mentioned this before on some previous pods to do with religion and things like that. But a lot of biblical texts talk about heaven and hell. And I think one interesting sort of frame to look at these things through is on your deathbed or someone else's deathbed at the end of their life, if you look back on your life and you know that you didn't do all the things that you could have done, or you have regrets in some sense, and or it's the distribution of those things is the majority is regrets or wishing that you had done more, or you know what I mean? Like you feel as if you didn't live your life well. I would liken that to a hell, right? And then the inverse of that would be looking back and just being like, I'm proud of myself. Like I faced that challenge. I faced that adversity. I did these things, even though like I was scared and it was hard and all of this other stuff. Like I pushed through, and like, I'm so grateful and so proud that I could do that. And look at the impacts that that's had on the children and this, and, you know, all of these different things. That would be akin to the heavenly state, right? Being able to look back on your life and being really like satisfied with the fact that you did live life well, right? Like you sort of started here, and even though there are all these challenges and all these setbacks, you ended up being able to sample this amount of the universe and this amount of experiences, and you were able to have like what you perceive to be these positive effects on different things. That would be the heavenly state. And so I think in some sense, you know, the Bible's right in saying like, you know, what you do in life dictates whether you get into heaven or hell. I think maybe in some way, maybe they were trying to say like, you know, that is at the end state, that's what it is. Like you're either going to have a hellish time, you could live in denial your whole life, or, you know, come up with the reasons why you're not doing all this stuff. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to face that, and that'll be quite hard. Or you can face the trials and tribulations as they come to you and push through that through your entire life. And at the end of it, it's this beautiful thing.
That's a good take, dude. I like that.
You reckon?
Yeah. I like that take.
Okay.
Are you at all concerned that there's a possibility that on your deathbed, you might have the feeling that you didn't live life to the fullest, even though you attempted to live life to the fullest? Or sorry, I shouldn't say that. Oh, how did, what's his name?
Live life well.
Live life well, yeah. Are you at all concerned that maybe there's a possibility that on your deathbed, you won't be convinced that you lived life well?
Okay, so the key thing here with well is I think I'd be less likely to reflect back and think I haven't lived it well. But if we use your framing of live life to the fullest, I think that there's a much higher probability that I could look back and know that I haven't lived life to the fullest, right? Because it's just the fullest is just so big, so possible, so much, right? Like there's just so much. We don't even know what we're fully capable of, right?
Yeah.
There is just, it's almost an impossible task. It's just what he said, right? Like it's like, you know, even though you can't sample at all, you know that you can only ever sample this little bit. So I think if we use that framing, then yes, which is why I think that framing might not be the most useful. Whereas if we do use the well, I think that you can look back and think like, you know what? Wow, you can be proud of yourself, but it's all the little challenges, trials and tribulations along the way that you overcome. It's the reputation within yourself, like the stuff you know you could have done or didn't do. You know, like essentially that there's an accounting system, and to some degree you're holding that. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to reflect on it. So, but I also don't think it's a bad thing, right? So let's just take sort of a different frame of that and go reflecting back and realizing that you didn't do things as well as you could, or some things as well as you could. That's not inherently a bad thing either, right? Because in all seriousness, there's a huge amount to learn from that. And if that was the case, and you were facing that, I think a beautiful thing that you could do that would give you quite a lot of satisfaction is to impart that knowledge on younger generations or people around you that you care about, to have an honest conversation with them, right? To say like, in these last few weeks or this last few days, I've been thinking about these things, and I was reflecting back and thinking, if I could do something differently, this is what I would do. And so that's a beautiful thing, is you can essentially have that learning or have that opportunity to gain that insight at that moment, and then sharing that, putting that out into the universe, into the meme space, is a beautiful thing. And so even though you might not have lived your life as well as you might have wanted or whatever, you can still sort of make it all worthwhile, because there is information or knowledge to be extracted from that in and of itself.
Damn, dude. I love that. You made me feel a little bit better, actually, because sometimes I'm concerned. Like, sorry, I'm trying not to say like.
Good luck.
Fuck. Why is that a word that... Do you say it a lot too? I fucking hate saying it.
I've noticed myself typically saying right after sentences. So that's something I would like to minimize myself saying. But like is a way of using a relation to something else to sort of bridge an understanding. So it can be very useful. It can be overused as well. But feel free, go ahead.
I'm going to try it. All right. So, you may, because sometimes I do feel concerned. There's some days where I had a list of things to do and I wasn't able to complete it. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, damn, am I going to reflect on this one day? Am I going to be on my deathbed thinking, yo, I could have done more. I could have done more, right? Like, no, fuck that shit. You can't think that way. No regrets. We're moving forward. Let's keep trucking along. And I'm very good at not living life that way, about thinking about dwelling on the past and shit. I'm very good at that. But to be in the headspace of being on your deathbed is a perspective I've never been in before. So how am I going to reflect on some of these decisions when I'm in that headspace? Very difficult to put myself there, but am I going to think, yo, why the fuck did I take a year off of school and was basically just chilling, not working very much, just chilling, partying, doing drugs. I had a lot of fun, but it wasn't the best use of my time. And now that I'm maturing, and I'm not saying I'm mature, but I've matured in some sense. That could be reflected on as, fuck, dude, you wasted a whole goddamn year? Are you crazy? Like, why the fuck did you do that? But the way I feel about it now is like, dude, that year was dope though. Yeah, I did that. I'm glad I did it. I had a great time, but I didn't move, I didn't move the needle. So.
Yeah, but in some sense, like making the most use of your time isn't always the best thing to do, or it isn't actually making the most use of your time. Like, you taking that year off, like you said, you had a variety of different experiences, which has allowed you to explore a different possibility space, a different lens on the world, a different set of experiences. And then by doing that, it created the space for you to start to think about other things and different things. And then, even the fact of like, oh, maybe I wasted that time, that can motivate you to do things now in the present that you might not have done if you pursued work straight out of school, right? So you can never really say, it is your life to live. And so these are the things that you have done. You can reflect on them and think to yourself, I want to do more of this or less of that. Or, I've already had that time to chill and wax. Now I can, dedicate myself to working hard or whatever, because you want to be in a position where you can explore more or get yourself into a position where you can cause more physical transformations in the universe. I think that's a really cool thing, because you can start to then create the future. And that is just like infinitely exciting to me. That is an amazing thing to think about. But I think that just to hit on the point you made about like, if you're on your deathbed and you look back and you think to myself, like, oh, I didn't really live my life well. I think it would almost be inevitable to have it in some way, right? Like unless you were, I don't know, crazy in some sense or highly delusional, right? Or very ignorant, to look back and just be like, yeah, I lived the absolute best life in some sense, where I lived like fully to well or whatever. Like, I think that looking back and thinking there are things that you could have done differently or that you might have wished you had done differently isn't inherently a bad thing. Like I said before, I think that's actually a beautiful thing, because that even in the last days of your life, you can still learn. You can still gain new insight. You can still gain a new perspective. And then because of communication and interaction, things like that, you can take that, essentially what you've sampled, like think about like an LLM, it only knows what it's trained on, right? So, you've had this whole life experience, that's all in you. So, you're this model, right? And then even at the last moment, right, you can crystallize this bit of knowledge and put it out into the memeverse or the meme space. So you've still contributed positively. You've just added this little bit of value. I think that's a beautiful thing. So I don't even think that that's a bad thing. Right? Like, I think it's like actually pretty good to look back and be like, oh shit, there's all this stuff I could have done better. And then because that's a learning, that's a knowledge. You can distill that into knowledge.
Fuck, guy, you're on fire, bro. You're making me feel better about this shit. I'm getting a lot out of this, actually. That's sick. Glad we're talking about this.
This is not a fucking therapy session, bro. This is a podcast meant for entertainment purposes.
All right. Yeah, you're right. No,
I'm very fucking with you. I'm happy that it's useful as well. Like Asimov nails it, don't you think? Like, we are just these finite beings, right? And all we can really do is just like understand that we exist in this potentially infinite space of experiences, and we're bounded by physical laws, so to speak. But like, even within that space, there is essentially this infinite possibility space. And to live a life well is to explore that, right? And to know that there's these like, what we would typically define as like good and bad, or positive and negative, or there's dark places and then there's light places. There's all of this so you got these two extremes, so to speak, and then you've got all this rich spectrum in the middle of possibility and experience space. And so, in some sense, being alive, you owe it to yourself and to civilization and to humanity and this causal structure that is propagated through time to experience that sucker, right? To explore it and to experience it. And that's why, like, I think like you couldn't be wrong to say good and bad in some sense, because at the end of the day, it's just life experiencing different possibilities, different experiences, different spaces, different dimensions.
Do you have a bucket list?
Like kind of, but not really. Like there's not a physical list that has a bunch of things that I want to do or tick off. But like in my narrative that I tell myself, like my identity and all this sort of stuff, like there's definitely things that I would like to do. I'm pretty sure you have a bucket list, right?
No, I have the same answer as you. Okay. There are like a lot of experiences that I would like to do, but a physical actual list, no, I don't. There's some thoughts that I've had of things that I'd like to do, but I haven't really put together a list per se. But I was just kind of thinking the concept of a bucket list. So if you actually construct a physical bucket list, then do you feel pressured to complete those things in order for you to achieve your happiness before you die? And by doing that, can that sort of work against you creating a bucket list? There's obviously benefits, but I just want to hone in on maybe that negative aspect of it, of that not so useful aspect of it, if it does exist, where it puts you in a headspace of, oh my goodness, if I don't complete my bucket list, I can't die happy. And if you don't complete it for some sort of circumstance, you're putting yourself in a losing position. What do you think about that?
I think yeah, definitely possible. As someone who doesn't have a list, it's hard to know what the people with lists do. But my reason for not really having a list is like, there's like, my list would probably be infinitely long. Like there's literally so much that I would love to do and like to do and experience and go. And so like, I don't know, I've never really felt like it was a good use of my time to write down all of those things, because I could probably spend the rest of my life writing a list down instead of actually going and doing things. And so, yeah, I prefer to just put myself in better positions over time to maximize my ability to explore and have exposure to possibility space, while simultaneously trying to like minimize my exposure or exposure to certain other possibility spaces. Like there's definitely certain things that I don't care to do and that I don't want to experience. Like there's just certain things I definitely don't want to get into, right? Like I don't want to end up like John McAfee, who has to get, do weird stuff to, get aroused or anything like that. Like, that's definitely not a place I want to be going. That's not where I would like to, I don't want to explore that possibility space or that experience space. Yeah. So like, yeah, for me, it's more about doing the things over time, like enhancing my ability to explore and navigate possibility space, so that I can open myself up to being in the right positions at the right time, having the energy, having the ability, having the capacity to maximize my experience and exploration of possibility space in certain dimensions and in certain trajectories, in certain spaces as well.
Have you ever had instances in your life where you said you weren't going to do something and then eventually you did it?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, it happens to me too, all the time. I'm like, oh, fuck. I told myself I would never do this.
Time.
Yeah.
It's less and less overtime now, which is good. Like that's why I'm very proud. I can own that. I can say that because I'm proud of that, because it used to be a lot more, but the incidence of that has definitely decreased over time. Like I feel like I'm getting better at aligning what I want to do, what I say I'm going to do, with what actually happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like as I'm getting older, I'm getting better at that as well, of understanding of what I want to do. And you're right, it does happen less and less. I guess maybe that happens as you get to know yourself better as you age.
It definitely, but also on top of that, like it can be many different things. Like it's literally just like you want to improve your accounting system with yourself. Like, man, why do I say I'm not going to do something and then I end up doing it? It's like, that's not aligned. That's not an aligned life. That's a divergent path. And I think really good little tangent here is like, the more you can align with all of those things, the sort of like, the more focused, the more momentum you can develop in certain directions, which increases your ability to explore and experience, right? Whereas the more you sort of diverge or you become, you deviate from that, right? What you say you're going to do and what you end up doing are two different things. The more you pull apart, the less you can experience, right? It constrains you. It holds you back. It minimizes your ability to explore the richness of possibility space. Instead, you get caught up repeating the same things over and over and over again.
Theo Vaughn has a really funny story, and I can kind of relate to this situation because I would probably do something similar. So he finishes a comedy night. He's outside. He's just chilling by himself, and this group of people pull up in a limo, and like, yo, Theo Vaughn, that was a fucking sick show. Yo, come party with us. Come party with us. We're going to this party, this after party. You got to come. And he's by himself, but he pretends. Sorry, I'll just say this. So he goes up to the limo. He's like, all right, cool. I'm coming to the party, but only on one condition. I can take my friend. And like, yeah, fuck yeah, dude. Take whoever. Yeah, take your friend. He's like, all right, I'll be right back. And he just goes up to one of the first guys he sees that he doesn't know that's also outside the club, just like this weird looking dude. And he goes up to him. He's like, yo, buddy, you see those guys in the limo over there? I told them that we're friends. So just pretend that you're my friend and let's go to this party together. And he did that just because he thought it would be funny and it would be like a weird experience to do that. So then him and this random fucking dude who he's pretending are friends get in a limo, and the guy's acting like they've known each other forever sort of thing. They get to the party and they're having a good time. Buddy goes his way. Theo Von is going his way. It's socializing with everyone at the party. And suddenly he hears a couple of screams and a window broke or something. And someone came downstairs like, yo, someone just stole a bunch of purses. And it ended up being the guy that he brought to the fucking party. And Theo Von was thinking in his head, like he was saying, oh, fuck, like who would do that? But inside he was saying, yo, this is the best party ever.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Wow. Why? Because of just the chaos.
He just likes to put himself in positions where something weird could happen. And I think that's just such a funny story. And I can kind of relate to that because I also enjoy putting myself in weird situations. Theo Von he's out there though. Like he's out there.
Yeah, he's for sure out there.
Yeah. I just love that story though. Like imagine doing that. I think that's so funny.
It would be, that is very fun. I definitely thought that story was going in a different direction. I thought that he was inviting the random into the limo to go for a party to share like different experiences with just random people and expand their experience space and their like what they've got exposure to. And then it turns out that the guy just robbed everybody, which is also fucking hilarious. But yeah, naive me was going down a very different path there.
Maybe you're going down a path of something that you would have got out of that night. Because honestly,
my bias.
Yeah. Because I think that if you were Theo Von, I don't think that guy would have robbed everybody. I think it would have been different. Theo Von probably has something about him that I'm not saying provoked.
He's a deviant, bro. He's deviant as. Yeah.
Right. So maybe something he was doing or kind of made this guy think like, yo, I could probably, rob everybody's purses right now. But if you were there with him, I think it would have been a different night, right? It would have been what you said. It would have been new experiences. You would have got to know that guy probably. You would have found something about him that you can relate to because you probably would have maybe some questions that you ask or you would have somehow, I think, got to understand or got to an understanding at a level of understanding with him that you could sort of exploit and relate to and get to know this person, whoever it may be. So I think it would have been different for you.
I appreciate your vote of confidence. That's very kind words. I also, Theo Von was probably like dropping seeds to be like, yeah, you should imagine just robbing these motherfuckers or whatever, like, how he talks, like, and he's from the trailer parks, like he grew up in that, so to speak. So let's make a little transition here. When did you watch Dune? Like, how recently have you seen that movie from Frank Herbert?
Whenever it was available on DVD, and then I watched it illegally online. So whenever it was first available to watch illegally online, I watched it.
So maybe like maybe a year or 2 years ago, so to speak. Probably.
Yeah, I feel like it was during the pandemic because I don't really watch movies anymore.
Yeah, I'm the same. But that one,
yeah,
I've gone out of my way to watch, and not just once, but a couple times. Okay, so do you remember much about it? Like, do you sort of remember the gist?
Okay. There is a royal family who they have some sort of, I don't want to say powers, but they've evolved in a way where they're able to have this light that follows them. They're able to do some sort of telepathy or somewhat control objects with their mind. And they're on this planet and they're exploiting the planet, mining for something. And there's sort of this battle between this royal family and the people that live on this planet. Something like that, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got a bit of the gist, but you're not necessarily like full, like obsessed with Dune, right? I'm a little bit different. There is so many levels of meaning in Dune. Like you've got your classic hero's journey, but then he brings in these other elements of like religion and these holy wars and jihadism, lots of stuff from Islam, and he toys with the concept of free will and how in control is someone, or is the path predefined or predetermined. All of these different things, right? So Frank Herbert is quite brilliant. And I've only recently just like really got into Frank Herbert. Like I was not very aware of him up until the movie came out. Like I didn't know of Dune. And so since then I've started to read the book series. And I've really, in the last couple of weeks, got interested in Frank Herbert as well as Asimov, right? Purely for these sort of two reasons. I find it's incredibly expansive. And what they pack into their writing is just like these just insane levels of meaning. And when I say that, I mean levels of abstraction. So we talk about abstraction many times. We've spoken about it, but abstraction is like being able to forget certain bits of information so that you can just focus on like that level. So you can understand an incredibly complex thing. You have to forget certain parts of it, so to speak. You can't track every little bit. Okay, so Frank Herbert with the Dune series, he's got some brilliant talks, which we're not going to have time to get into today, but we will try and link them in the description where he actually talks about these concepts. But he wrote these like back in the 60s, okay, these books. And so much of what he wrote is possible of happening now and in the future. So I just give a quick sort of overview with it. Like, so yeah, life is on Earth, right? And similar in his books. And then we keep developing technology and we develop AI, right? And we develop machines that can think, okay? And then they end up taking over. And because they have no emotions, whatever, it's like this horrible time for everybody. And then there's this huge, big event where, humans and all the other biological get together to sort of like destroy the thinking machines, and then they ban thinking machines from the universe, right? So you're not allowed to have these thinking machines. And then the Dune movie is written after that time. So after all of that's happened, like it's like 8,000 years in the future. But how could somebody in the 1960s start to think of these things, right? And part of the way he did that was because he started to think about different things about life and about humans, right? Like, so what is a religion? And there's many references to this in the Dune movie, and it's like, religions are tools to control the masses. And so, we spoke about this many times. Religions are just shared belief systems. And it's like a set of axioms or a set of operating principles, a set of beliefs that steer people's behavior. And then in this Dune movie, right, just to sort of tie all this sort of stuff together, there's the role of Paul. I don't know if you remember him. He was the young sort of main character that the movie was about.
Vaguely.
Okay. So anyway, he's meant to be the one, right? Kizat Haderach, this being that was selectively bred, right? It's another crazy part to it, to be able to transcend space and time, to see the future and the past, and to see it all in one big space. And so he could lead the universe to live in better, right, or live more well, right? Like he could free them from the oppression of the tyranny and the pain and the suffering and all these other things, and sort of transcend that. But the craziest thing about this is in the movie, it's like, in order to get to that, there has to be immense pain and suffering, right? So it's not like, it's like this dichotomy, right? In order to get this life or this existence free of pain and suffering, we've got to go through all this pain and suffering. And the other layer that I just wanted to quickly talk about is, he's meant to be the one, and he's meant to have this almighty ability to transcend space and time and to do whatever. He's meant to be totally free, but he isn't. because he wasn't even necessarily free. Like he was over 10,000 years, he was constructed in a way. Bloodlines were deliberately crossed and certain things were done so that he was specifically bred in some sense. And then he has this big battle about whether or not, is he really free to do this? Like, it's made out like he's choosing to be the one, but is he really? Because there's all these other things at play. So tying that into this purpose of meaning in life and stuff is what I was trying to get at, is like, at the end of the day, if you want to think that you have free will and you choose to act accordingly, in some sense you can. But if you don't think you have free will, then you probably won't. But one strange thing about that, with the meaning of it, is if you do think you have free will, you can also end up not having it. Sounds counterintuitive.
Also, if you believe that you do have free will,
you have the chance of having it.
Yeah, you might not have it.
But it doesn't guarantee that you'll have it.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
That's a much clearer way of saying it. Okay. So tying it into, the meaning of life and all these other things, it is what you make of it, right? Each day we, in some sense, are faced with a set of possibilities, set of what can be possible. And to be able to think on that and think like, what have I previously done? Did that lead me to where I wanted to go? Did that lead me to having some improved quality of life or a satisfaction? Or did I think that I lived my day well? Would I like to do something differently? And being able to do that sort of error correction, I think, is one very simple way where a person, an individual, can start to lead a life more aligned or more well according to themselves. They can start to change the things that happen in their life, and they can start to expand and explore that possibility space a little bit greater. But it is a crazy thing about life, is that we are given these opportunities every single day, every moment. And I like to believe that we do have these degrees of freedom, and that you can make choices within those degrees of freedom that will either in the future constrain your degrees of freedom, they'll minimize the degrees of freedom, or you can make choices and take actions day to day, and these are typically hard and challenging, that can expand those degrees of freedom over time. And I would like to argue that it is the expansion of those degrees of freedom and your ability to navigate between or in that space, that space of degrees of freedom, that leads to one living a life well lived.
Well done, guy. Well done. I'm gonna have to watch that movie again with that in mind. I don't think I paid attention.
I highly recommend everyone watch it again. And there is like a Dune wiki with like the Dune lore and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Take a little bit of time to read some of that. It's just the amount of knowledge that he packs into these things is amazing. And same with Asimov. Do it for Asimov as well. There is so much to be learned from this science fiction. It is, in my opinion, the science fiction is actually richer than the nonfiction. And that was a big learning and realization that I've come to over my life. Because before that, I thought that it was all about nonfiction. That's how you learn. That's how you acquire knowledge. But no, there's so much to be obtained from the science fiction, or just from fiction in general.
All right, guy. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. If you enjoyed the podcast, let us know. If you have any questions, if we fucked anything up, feel free to like and comment, or even just comment. Tell us we're idiots. It doesn't matter. If you watch till the end, thank you very much. You are one of the very few that have, and we appreciate your attention. Again, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week. Polska, have a lovely night. Peace out.
Leave humanity behind.
Oh, are you the transhumanist message?
All right. I love you, bro. Peace.
Love you too, guys. Bye.